Hogwarts, Grey Demon Lord's Rise in Wizarding World. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 16. Next, everyone was divided into two by Snape, and in order to prevent Hermione from helping Harry, Snape dropped Hermione far away from Alvin's group. And Alvin's tablemate, Michael Connor, who is also a Ravenclaw student, went to team up with Hermione's tablemate Lavender Braun. Alvin looked at the unkempt girl in front of him. The messy hairstyle could not hide the girl's delicate face, and the slightly discordant incisors slightly destroyed the overall beauty. But it also makes the girl look a little more cute. Well, it's a good loli. Nodding at Hermione in a friendly gesture, Alvin began to look down and deal with the ingredients on hand, herbs. Hermione, on the other hand, seemed a little eager to talk. But eventually she spoke. Alvin Gaunt, are you in Garden Elementary School? Alvin raised his head in surprise and looked at Hermione. Yes, I graduated from Garden Elementary School, how do you know? Hermione let out a long sigh of relief, and the answer in her heart was finally confirmed. Then he replied quickly. Sure enough, it was you. When I heard your name at the sorting ceremony, I guessed so. Immediately, Hermione generously stretched out her hand. Meet me, my name is Hermione Granger, your elementary school classmate, but I am in class 4, I heard your legend at that time, you can't come to school a few times a year, but every time you get a perfect score in all subjects. Alvin suddenly realized that he and Hermione were classmates in an elementary school, and he never recognized Hermione because he was busy making money at that time, and he didn't go to school a few times. If he had known that he and Hermione were classmates, he would have been. Ahem, that would be unpunishable. Alvin also stretched out his hand and shook it with Hermione. Nice to meet you, Miss Granger, it seems that we are quite fateful. Just call me Hermione, besides, you have been pressing me in elementary school and came to Hogwarts, I will not admit defeat, I must be above you. The girl looked at Alvin seriously and swore and said. Alvin smiled, not caring, the girl in front of him was so real. Pretty cute, though. Mr. Gaunt, if I were you, what I would do now is not to tease my classmates, but to immediately put the powder of the viper's tooth into the crucible. Snape's sinister voice came from the side, making Hermione blush. However, Alvin's skin was thick enough to calmly put the powder of the viper's tooth into the crucible and stir it. Snape saw that Alvin was unmoved, so he gave up on targeting. Like a bat, he floated to Harry's side, staring closely at Harry's every move, ready to spray at any time. Just like that, an hour later, a group of young wizards walked out of the potions classroom with gloomy faces. Harry, in particular, had been squirted by Snape, delirious and confused. A bad expression on his face. Just now, because of his irregular operation, Snape had already deducted 5 points from Gryffindor. Alvin, on the other hand, stayed, and seeing Harry's tragic situation, he felt the need to talk to Snape. He didn't want to be stared at by an old bat, although he was not afraid, but it was a trouble after all. Mr. Gaunt, I think you should leave my classroom now and stay here so that I can lock you up. Snape started again, and the smell was too rushed. Alvin is also unambiguous and straight to the point. Professor, I think we can talk. Snape didn't speak, staring at the boy in front of him with his dark eyes like a pool of stagnant water. Alvin continued. I'm sorry, Professor, I don't want to see anything at the sorting ceremony, but you also saw it, the mouth of the sorting hat, it's too fast. As you said, although I am from the Gaunt family, I am of mixed blood. As far as I know, Slytherin is not very welcoming to students like me. Ravenclaw is a better choice for the rest of the Slytherin students. After saying this, Alvin looked at Snape, waiting for his reply. The expression on Snape's face didn't change in the slightest, and he just stood and looked at Alvin quietly. For a moment, the entire classroom fell silent, and Alvin could even hear Snape's breathing. I don't know how long it took, Snape finally spoke. Mr. Gaunt, there are some things that can end here on my side, but the behavior of some students is not something I can control, even if I am their dean. Alvin breathed a long sigh of relief that the matter was finally resolved. He also wanted to build a good relationship with Snape and learn more about potions. Of course, Professor, I only care about your attitude, as for the others, it doesn't matter. Then I will take my leave first. After speaking, Alvin bowed slightly and left the classroom. Snape looked at the back of Alvin leaving and was silent for a long time. Deep eyes, quietly looking into the distance. If I had been like him at that time, Lily, would we have a different ending? Snape muttered, and 2 drops of crystal appeared in his eye sockets. What Snape thought, Alvin didn't know. Now he was stopped by Fred and George. Ah. Master Gaunt, good afternoon. Fred and George spoke exaggeratedly and saluted Alvin with funny movements. Alvin was speechless and rolled his eyes. Don't be poor, what's the matter? Fred smiled and grabbed Alvin's shoulders, very familiar. George and I cordially invite you to join tonight's Hogwarts night party, this Saturday, 12 o'clock in the evening, in the corridor on the right side of the 4th floor. Alvin was a little curious about what the twins were going to pull him to do. But he didn't have much to do anyway, just to see what they were going to do. So Alvin agreed in one bite. Seeing that Alvin agreed very happily, George and Fred hooked up and left. Saying goodbye to the two living treasures, Alvin hurried to the auditorium, ate a few bites of lunch at random, and there was a session of History of Magic in the afternoon, and the time was a little rushed. In the History of Magic class, Alvin fell asleep directly, and his professor was a ghost, Professor Binns. The professor began to lecture, urinating the whole time, the tone did not fluctuate, and the listener was drowsy. Alvin couldn't bear it, and after listening for 10 minutes, he successfully fell asleep under Hermione's hatred of iron and steel, not far away. At the same time, in the headmaster's office on the 8th floor, Snape and Dumbledore sat opposite each other, and a conversation about Alvin was about to begin. Episode 17, 8th floor, Principal's office. It is a large, bright round room. The walls are covered with portraits of people with their eyes closed, but from the eyes they open from time to time, you can tell that they are just pretending to rest again. On a tall bench behind the desk, a tattered hat must have been quietly placed on it, and if Alvin was there, he would have recognized it as a sorting hat. Snape and Dumbledore sat opposite each other. "So Severus, would you like something to drink, or some afternoon dessert? Lemon sherbet? Toffee finger cakes? Or some cockroach pile?" Snape frowned and decisively refused. "No need, Headmaster Dumbledore, I'm here to discuss with you about Alvin Gaunt." Dumbledore looked a little regretful when he heard Snape's refusal, but when he heard Snape's words later, he stopped tangling. "Put down the book in your hand, cross your fingers, and place it on the table." The expression became serious. "So Severus, can you tell us what you think of Alvin Gaunt?" Snape stated calmly, calm, decisive, gifted, and with a clear purpose, still a fancy guy. Snape finally added, "Oh?" Dumbledore helped his glasses, and a bright light flashed. Dumbledore did not expect that such a high evaluation would be heard from Snape. If Dumbledore understood correctly, Snape said a cold joke in the end, right? Now Dumbledore's interest in Alvin is even stronger. "I thought you would have some subjective prejudice against Mr. Gaunt about the matter at the sorting ceremony, but I didn't expect you to think so highly of him." "Yes, Dumbledore, that's what I say about him. I have a lot of things to do and don't want to waste time with a first-year wizard." Snape ignored Dumbledore's slightly teasing words and added, "Although he has a special last name, his character will not be the next Dark Lord," and without the Dark Lord he found a little girlfriend on his first day at school, and tried to pry another Gryffindor. Dumbledore couldn't help but laugh again when he heard this. "No, Severus, I think you misunderstood me. My concern for Mr. Gaunt is indeed a little special because of his last name. You know, his last name is bound to cause him some trouble, and Voldemort will come back eventually. In some dark arts, bloodlines are often exploited. Tom's research in this area is something that even I would admire." Dumbledore explained the reason, and seeing that Snape did not mean to express an opinion, he continued to speak. "Actually, during the summer vacation, I also did some small research on Mr. Gaunt." Speaking of this, Dumbledore also winked mischievously at Snape. Hearing this, Snape's expression became even more ugly. "If you are sick, you have personally ended, so what is the point of my observation today? I didn't expect that the greatest white wizard of the 20th century would pay so much attention to a teenage boy." Thinking of this, Snape felt the need to get to know the headmaster of Hogwarts again. As if not seeing the change in Snape's expression, Dumbledore continued. "I've been to the orphanage where Mr. Gaunt lived, and people there spoke highly of him, and every year Mr. Gaunt donated a lot of money to cover the orphanage's expenses. The most important thing is that he has a phoenix, which can greatly dispel the darkness in people's hearts and give them great courage. So, he's not the same as Tom. I asked you to observe him only because I think you can properly help him and make him grow faster. In this way, he can also better face future crises." When Snape heard this, it was like eating a dead fly, and it was not so disgusting to let a Slytherin headmaster teach a student who had rejected Slytherin. But remembering the conversation in the potions classroom, Snape hesitated. As if seeing through Snape's thoughts, Dumbledore followed closely. "Of course, Philippus told me yesterday about Mr. Gaunt's talent for charms, and I think he would be more than happy to train a good wizard for Ravenclaw." "No need." Snape interrupted Dumbledore as he spoke. "He is also the last blood of Slytherin in England, and as head of Slytherin, I have an obligation to provide some preferential treatment to the descendants of the founder. I'll go and talk to Mr. Gaunt." With that, Snape stood up and walked towards the door, ending the conversation. Dumbledore looked at Snape who was leaving, the corners of his mouth hooked up some arcs, and naturally said to himself, "It seems that there is another funny little guy at Hogwarts, who can actually make Snape so attentive to him." At this time, the successive principals on the wall no longer pretended to be dead, and one of the portraits spoke, looking very angry. "As a descendant of Slytherin, it is a shame of pure blood to actually choose Ravenclaw. Headmaster Black, Mr. Gaunt is not a pure blood. According to the investigation, his mother is the blood of the Gaunt family, and his father is just an ordinary muggle. Dumbledore explained with a smile. Hearing this, Principal Black became even more angry, and kept saying some words beginning with F. And the other grumpy principal couldn't stand it anymore, and rushed into Black's portrait with a punch, directly knocking Principal Black to the ground. The two immediately started a melee. Dumbledore didn't care, while the other portraits looked at this scene and loudly cheered for the grumpy headmaster. There were even two principals who were eager to join in. It seems that this Principal Black is not very popular. And Dumbledore was oblivious to the events before these headmaster portraits, and there was constant flickering light in his deep eyes, as if he was thinking about something. Episode 18. Before I knew it, Alvin's first week at Hogwarts had passed. And his name of genius has slowly spread at Hogwarts. He had added points to Ravenclaw in almost all of his classes. Except for the history of magic. Professor Binns never gives extra points to students. Even Professor McGonagall has even publicly stated that he has invited Erwin to join his Metamorphosis Club. For the first time, Professor McGonagall had invited a first-year student to join her Transfiguration Club. For a time, Alvin's reputation spread among the young wizards, and coupled with his excellent appearance, no matter where he went, there would be little witches secretly observing him. When Alvin noticed their gaze, he quickly looked away shyly, but there were also bold little witches, not only not shy, but also generously threw a wink at him. Provoked Autumn to be jealous. Alvin's waist did not suffer from this. On Friday afternoon, Alvin and Cho were finishing their homework in the Ravenclaw common room. Suddenly, Alvin remembered the invitation of the Weasley twins and looked up at Cho next to him. Autumn, George and Fred invited me to meet tomorrow night at 12 o'clock in the hallway on the 4th floor. Are you coming? Cho also raised her head and looked at Alvin in surprise. Can I go? Although Cho asked, Alvin clearly saw the anticipation in the little witch's eyes. Smiling easily, Alvin replied affirmatively. Of course, although I don't know what they call me, but you must have no problem coming, they seem to have invited others as well. Cho got Alvin's affirmative reply, very happy, and didn't care about any homework, and kept pulling Alvin to chat about what they might do tomorrow. Obviously looking forward to it. Alvin put down his pen and chatted with Cho, homework or something, you can write at any time. And just like that, it was Saturday night. Near 12 o'clock, Alvin left his bedroom and went to the lounge. In the common room, only Cho was sitting there, holding a copy of the Irish Quidditch history in his hand. It's just that her eyes glance at the door of the boys' dormitory from time to time. Apparently, the mind is not on the book. Seeing Cho's anxiety, Alvin also walked to her side in 3 or 2 steps and gently patted her head. Pampered smiled, keep you waiting, let's go now. Cho returned a warm smile, put down the book, and followed Alvin out of the lounge. Alvin took out his wand, pulled Cho with one hand, and held the wand in the other hand to lightly touch Cho's body, and suddenly Cho's figure became transparent. Then Alvin also nodded himself and disappeared with it. Cho felt amazing. Stretched out his other hand and shook it. But she didn't see it. What kind of magic is this, so amazing? Phantom curse, if you want to learn it, I'll teach you back. Now hold my hand and don't let go, or I won't be able to find out where you are. If George and Fred were here, they would definitely spit out the Alvin double standard. We have to work hard to secretly go to the forbidden book area to study, and Cho, you have to teach by hand. Of course, if Alvin knew, he wouldn't care, just kidding, you guys are not soft, lowly. Where do you get so many requests? The two held hands all the way to the right corridor on the 4th floor, and found the twins standing in a corner, with a black brother next to them. Lifting the phantom curse, Alvin waved at the 3, George. Fred, the 3 of them instantly turned their heads and saw the 2 holding hands. One of the twins has a funny tone. Worthy of being young Master Gaunt, even if you go at night, you must bring a beautiful girl. Cho lowered her head shyly when she heard this, although many people knew about her relationship with Alvin, but she still felt embarrassed to hear the twins' ridicule. Alvin hammered the twins' shoulders angrily. This is Cho, my girlfriend. Won't you introduce me to this one yet? Alvin saw the black brother next to him. Without waiting for the twins to speak, the black brother opened his own mouth and introduced himself. Hello, my name is Lee Jordan, good brothers George and Fred, and they mentioned you to me, Alvin Gaunt. You did a beautiful job that day, and no one has been able to successfully play a prank on them for a long time. After speaking, he gave a thumbs up, showed a mouthful of big white teeth, and smiled at Alvin. Cho covered his mouth again to prevent himself from laughing. Lee Jordan looks like this, it's too humble. Alvin couldn't help but laugh, but he remembered who he was, and the Quidditch narrator in the movie was always reprimanded by Professor McGonagall for pulling aside. It was Fred and George's nemesis. Nodded at Lee Jordan, just call me Alvin. After several people got to know each other, Alvin asked curiously. So, what are we doing when we come out so late? And Lee, what's in the bag you have in your hand? George and Fred looked at each other and smiled mysteriously. Nervously, he came to Alvin's side. We're going to take you to one of the most mysterious places in Hogwarts. Trust me, you'll love it very much. As for what's in the bag, you'll know when the time comes. After speaking, regardless of Alvin's reaction, the two pulled Lee Jordan and led the way downstairs. Alvin and Cho looked at each other and could only follow behind. With good luck along the way, the group did not meet Filch and his cat. I came to the basement floor. When he got here, he understood that he was going to the kitchen. Sure enough, the twins stopped in front of another picture full of food. Among them, a silver bowl is filled with various fruits. One of the twins stepped forward and gently scratched a large green pear. The pear squirmed, grinned stupidly, and suddenly protruded from the painting and twisted into a doorknob. Then, as soon as you reach out, the door opens. Walking through the door, inside is a large room with very high ceilings. The area is almost the same size as the auditorium, and there are many clean copper cutlery piled up on the surrounding stone walls. More than 100 elves are busy inside. After seeing Alvin and his party come in, a house elf, who seemed to be the leader, came over. Respectfully bow. Good evening, dear Mr. Weasley and his companions. My name is Nin. Is there anything I can do for you? Apparently, Gemini is a regular here, and the elves already know them. The twins were not polite and said with a big grin, bring us some dinner, some dessert, by the way, another pot of black tea for us, and a few cups. Episode 19. Out of the kitchen, Cho was still stunned. It wasn't until she walked to an abandoned classroom that she came to her senses slightly. I didn't expect that there were so many elves in the kitchen of Hogwarts. Cho sighed with emotion. Although Cho is already in the 2nd grade, he really doesn't know that their usual food is made by house elves. Alvin nodded in agreement. Although he had long known that there were many elves at Hogwarts, he was still shocked to see more than 100 house elves working together again. Walking into the classroom, the twins and Lee skillfully put food on the table. Roast lamb, roast chicken, fried sausages, Cornish pie, Yorkshire pudding, pumpkin pie, and a thick soup. Finally, Lee Jordan opened the bag in his hand, and inside there were several bottles, which contained a golden liquid. What is it? Looking at the bottles, Cho asked curiously. Butterbeer. The twins showed off triumphantly. How did you buy it, and would they sell it to minors? Lee Jordan shrugged. Growing like me, the waiter of the 3 Brooms didn't even ask my age and sold it directly to me. Poof. Hearing Lee's answer, Cho couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, it is really difficult for you to tell how old the average black person is, and he is very old. Looking at the sumptuous food on the table, Alvin's appetite also came up. You know, it's midnight now, and it's 5 or 6 hours before dinner time. The stomach is really a little evil. However, he still told Cho to drink less. Cho frowned and agreed. Come on, let's toast and make it clear that our Hogwarts Night Tour team has welcomed a new member. George pulled a stool, stepped on it with one foot, raised the bottle in his hand, and signaled to the crowd, cheers. The rest of the people also have a similar example bottle and touch it. After Alvin drank it, he felt that the taste was unexpectedly soft, and the wine taste was not strong. Looking at Cho also seemed to think that the taste of this thing was good, and even drank a few small sips. Alvin, who was watching, quickly stopped her. The dinner had just begun, don't get drunk as soon as you came up. Although the taste of butterbeer is not strong, it is also alcoholic. Alvin, this is really good. I wanted to try it a long time ago, but my parents always said that I was not yet an adult and did not let me drink it. After 2 glasses of wine, Cho's little face turned red and said excitedly to Alvin. Today's behavior made her very excited. Cho, who has been a good girl since she was a child, has never been so presumptuous, and she violated at least 10 school rules and drank alcohol in one night. Looking at Cho Jiahan's appearance, Alvin also felt very interesting. Opened his mouth to coax. If you like it, I'll bring you here often in the future. Phew, the twins and Lee Jordan next to him roared. Alvin, we know a lot of secret passages to Hogsmeade. If you want to go, contact us in advance next time. George and Fred took care of everything, and Alvin smiled and nodded in response. Several people stopped talking, buried their heads, and ate hard, clinking glasses from time to time and taking a sip of butterbeer. A small banquet was formed in this abandoned classroom. Soon, the food on the table was wiped out, and several people ate straight hum. Feeling a little uncomfortable sitting like this, Alvin took out his wand, summoned a few chairs with a flying charm, and then cast a transfiguration charm, turning them into deck chairs one by one. After seeing it, how many people's eyes lit up, and this good thing? Hurriedly lay down. Ah, everyone let out a light sigh of satisfaction in unison, and exhaled a cloudy breath. Cho next to him couldn't help but sigh. Alvin, your transfiguration is so powerful. We haven't learned how to deform such a large object in the 2nd grade. Fred next to him also extended his thumb. Don't say that you will take it in 2 years, even if we don't. It seems that pulling Erwin into our Hogwarts night tour group is indeed the right choice. Erwin waved his hand, signaling that it was nothing. Gently holding the small hand of the girl next to him, his body shook rhythmically on the recliner. For a time, there was only the sound of creaking rocking chairs in the entire classroom. After a while, Erwin stretched and asked the twins lazily, "Don't you have 2 brothers at Hogwarts? Why didn't you call them this time?" "You mean Percy and Ron?" "No kidding, if we let our prefect know what we're doing today, we'll definitely get a yelling letter from our mother the next day." Fred's voice sounded, his tone firm. "As for our Ronnie, that's Mom's good baby, how can we take him badly?" After saying that, Fred himself laughed, and the rest of the people laughed when they heard it. Percy's reputation was not very good for Gryffindor, and he took care of this and that as a prefect, and made the little lions complain. Erwin had also always believed that someone as ambitious as Percy should go to Slytherin, not Gryffindor. It may be that the factor of his bloodline has caused the Sorting Hat to not look at Percy's other qualities. After all, the Weasleys were born Gryffindors. Subsequently, George and Fred shared some of their glorious deeds of the past 2 years. Even shared some secret passages to Hogwarts. Erwin and Cho listened with relish, feeling that the twins' campus life was really wonderful. The happy time is always short-lived, and after a while, everyone is a little sleepy, and after cleaning up the classroom and restoring everything to its original state, the few of them go back to their respective lounges. Because of drinking a lot of butterbeer, Erwin was afraid that they would be caught by Filch, so the twins and Lee cast a phantom spell. A few people left. Episode 20. Looking at the back of the twins and Lee's departure, Erwin said to Cho, "Let's go back too." At this time, Cho was already a little drunk, his eyes were confused, and he could only subconsciously nod his head in agreement. Looking at such an Autumn, Erwin could only shake his head helplessly, reaching out and taking Autumn into his arms, feeling the girl's weakness and bonelessness. Erwin has been silently chanting the 3-character mantra in his heart. This is not punished, this is not punished, raise it for a few more years. The two arrived at the Ravenclaw office, and Cho walked for a while, and his consciousness regained a lot. However, feeling the warm embrace of the teenager, he did not make a sound, just enjoyed silently. "Thank you, Erwin." After speaking, Cho summoned up his courage, and his warm lips lightly touched Erwin's handsome cheeks. Even without looking back, he ran towards the bedroom, looking a little flustered. Erwin froze in place. Thinking back to the touch just now, he muttered to himself, "What to run, I don't feel anything here." Laughing dumbly, Erwin also walked back to his bedroom, and with this trace of warmth, went to sleep. On Thursday, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, and the little wizard of Gryffindor arrived in a large meadow in front of the castle. Today, it's their first flying lesson of the semester. Many young wizards from wizarding families are bragging with their companions about their childhood flight managers. Especially a group of little wizards in Slytherin House. Draco Malfoy was showing off that he had evaded a Muggle helicopter in the first place. And complaining loudly that first-year students can't participate in Quidditch is very unfair. As he spoke, his eyes glanced at Harry unconsciously, and Erwin, who was chatting with Hermione, as if he was very sad that they had never ridden a broom since childhood. Erwin didn't have time to take care of Malfoy's boasting. He is comforting little Laurie now. "It's okay, Hermione, Harry haven't ridden a broomstick, and many little wizards are talking big, you don't have to be so nervous." Erwin softly comforted the brown-haired lowly in front of him. Hermione had been abnormal since she knew she was going to take flying lessons, and listening to Harry, during dinner in the morning, Hermione kept chanting the contents of the book Magical Quidditch. Neville next to him also listened hard to Hermione's nagging, hoping that learning some useful knowledge would help him in training for a while. "I can't care that the memory ball in my hand keeps flashing." After a while, their teacher, Madame Hooch, arrived. Pointing his wand at a pile of floating sweeps towards them. Then each person was divided. Erwin looked at the broom in his hand, and suddenly he was a little afraid to try. The broom in his hand was very worn, and a lot of branches and leaves had fallen off the tail. "Okay, now, stretch out your right hand and place it above the broom handle." Madame Hooch whistled, then say, "Get up, get up." Erwin concentrated and shouted at the broom lying on the ground. The broom immediately jumped into his hand, and Harry was like him. But the other little wizards didn't go so well, and Hermione's broom rolled around a few times and ignored her. Malfoy yelled several times before the broom bounced into his hand and almost hit him in the nose. Next, Mrs. Hooch explained some techniques, and then motioned for everyone to try it. "Listen to my whistle, 3, 2, 1, kick your legs." Erwin chopped lightly under his feet and floated smoothly in the air, and he suddenly found that his riding level was good, and the effect of the Blue Flight Experience book was already very strong. The broom will change direction according to his mind, raising and landing. Neville, who was not far away, was not so lucky, probably too nervous, and he seemed to have used his strength to eat milk when he stepped on the ground. Whoosh! I saw Neville at an angle close to 90 degrees, straight into the sky. The speed was so fast that Mrs. Hooch next to her did not react. Neville was already 20 feet off the ground. Unfortunately, Neville's hand slipped off the broomstick, and he fell straight out of the air into the grass underground. Madame Hooch was so frightened that she quickly tried to catch him with the floating charm, but it was probably too fast, and Madame Hooch's floating charm did not hit Neville. Just as the group of little wizards turned pale with fright, several little witches had already covered their eyes, as if they had foreseen the tragic situation of the one for a while. "You got him, Leviosa." At this time a firm and clear voice came. It was Alvin. Alvin's floating charm hit Neville in the air steadily, and Neville's speed of falling instantly decreased, and then gently landed on the ground with the wave of his wand. The rest of the people watched this scene blankly, and the little witches who covered their eyes also lowered their hands and looked at Neville, who was safe and sound. Whoosh! Instantly most of the young wizards cheered, and some even applauded. "Oh, Merlin!" Mrs. Hooch also came to her senses, hurriedly walked up and helped Neville up, and checked it. She was still uneasy and decided to take Neville to the hospital for a checkup. Ravenclaw, +10. What a wonderful floating spell, Mr. Gaunt. Before leaving, she did not forget to add 10 points to Alvin. After all, if it wasn't for Erwin, Neville would be miserable today, and she made such a big mistake, it was no better. When Madame Hooch was gone, Malfoy laughed loudly at Neville, and he also found Neville's memory ball. Picked it up. At this time, Harry couldn't take it anymore. "Take it, Malfoy," Harry whispered to Malfoy. Malfoy laughed wildly. "How about I put it on a tree and let Longbottom pick it up?" After that, without waiting for Harry to agree, he mounted his broom and flew up. And shouted at Harry in defiance. "If you have the ability, come and get it." Scarhead. Harry was annoyed when he heard this, so he rode directly on a broom and flew towards Malfoy. Inherited from James Potter, he quickly learned to control the broom and chased Malfoy through the sky. Alvin looked at the scene in front of him, which is why Harry was selected for the Quidditch team in his first year. Sure enough, it is a child of luck, and it cannot be opened and hung from strength, but it can be opened and hung in sports. In foreign countries, people with strong athletic ability are much more popular than those who study well. Enjoying the good play of these two people chasing me in the air, Alvin touched his chin and thought crankily. At this time a scream suddenly came from the side. It turned out to be Hermione. Hermione saw Harry rushing up, very anxious, involuntarily jumped, but she forgot that she was riding a broom ready to take off. In this way, Hermione rushed into the sky like an arrow off the string. Episode 21. All the little wizards, seeing Hermione rushing into the sky, cheered loudly, thinking that Hermione had gone up to stop the fight between the two men. But gradually, they realized that something was wrong. This Hermione, why is she still screaming? Alvin was also stupid. A group of bear children really thought that Hermione would be surprised by a broomstick, and shouted loudly on the ground. However, Alvin couldn't care about complaining. His legs were clamped, his knees were bent, and the whole person also flew into the sky and flew towards Hermione. Alvin accelerated desperately, and soon approached Hermione. "Hermione! Don't move, keep your balance." In the sky, Alvin shouted at Hermione. But now Hermione could not remain calm, her hand desperately clutching on the broomstick, for fear that as soon as she took off her hand, she would fall. Not knowing what she touched, Hermione's broom shook violently a few times, and then its speed suddenly increased and flew towards the woods in the distance. Alvin was also anxious. The whole person fell down, the upper body was almost all attached to the broom, and the comet broom that had reached the limit accelerated again, and made a creaking sound, as if it was about to fall apart at any time. Alvin couldn't care about this, and he could clearly see that Hermione's hand was about to lose hold on to the broomstick. Sure enough, within 2 seconds, Hermione couldn't hold on any longer, and the flying broom with both hands detached fell straight down. And Alvin sprinted with all his might, and finally Hermione was still 2 meters from the ground. Alvin successfully came below her, let go of the broom with both hands, reached out, and perfectly caught Hermione, who was about to fall to the ground. As soon as the arm sank, the entire broom also pressed down a lot, almost touching the ground, for fear that this broom would fall apart. Alvin clamped his legs, threw himself back, and slowed down. The moment he landed holding Hermione, the entire broom was completely divided into several sections, and completely scrapped. Hermione stared blankly at Alvin, who was holding her back in her arms, and her mouth grew up. "Finally, little girl." "Well," cried, it was really sad for the hearer to cry. "Merlin! How dare you?" Professor McGonagall's disbelieving voice was heard in the distance, and Alvin looked back to see Professor McGonagall hurrying towards them. Followed by Harry, who was wilting. And farther away, Professor Flitwick also ran this way. But with his small short legs, this is not far away. "Mr. Gaunt! Miss Granger! You guys actually. Before Professor McGonagall could finish her almost angry words, she saw Hermione crying in Alvin's arms. Suddenly I was dumbfounded, and I didn't know what to say. Sorry, Professor, Hermione didn't mean to, she just wanted to help. Later, Alvin explained what had just happened, and deliberately emphasized that Hermione was just a mistake instead of deliberately rushing into the sky. Hearing Alvin's explanation, Professor McGonagall opened her mouth, not knowing what to say. She understood that Alvin was speaking for Hermione, and that she had also saved the lion cub of her own house. She also had to thank Alvin. Mr. Gaunt, are you all right? At this time, Professor Flitwick arrived breathlessly, and he was a little overwhelmed when he saw the scene in front of him. He just heard the shout, and found that the little wizards who were taking the flying lesson below were not watching the professor, and came down to see what was going on. Unexpectedly, as soon as he arrived downstairs, he saw Alvin riding a broom to catch Hermione, which scared him to death. I'm okay, Professor, it's just Hermione, she needs some time off. Alvin said that he didn't have a fart, and he was still holding a little lolly, not to mention how beautiful it was. Mr. Gaunt, please help me get Miss Granger to the school hospital. Also, thanks for your help today, Ravenclaw, plus 20 points. Potter, you come with me to the office. Glancing at the current Hermione, she found that she no longer cried, but only sobbed from time to time. Professor McGonagall also knew that the little girl was thin-skinned, so she simply asked Alvin to send the Buddha to the west. Alvin did not refuse, did not ask Hermione's advice, directly hugged a princess, hugged Hermione, and went to the school infirmary. In the school infirmary, looking at Hermione, who was still dead burying her head in his arms, Alvin said helplessly, Okay, Hermione, it's just you and me here, you can let me go. Hermione didn't react at all. Alvin was speechless. If I don't get up, my clothes are soaked. The little witch finally reacted, raised her head, a pear blossom with rain on her little face, and 2 shades of redness. I don't know if it was crying just now or stuffy in Alvin's arms. It's very cute to watch. Seeing that the little witch raised her head and did not speak, Alvin could only continue to coax. Well, today was just an accident, it's all gone. Practice more later, I don't want to ride a broom anymore. Hermione reacted violently and directly interrupted Alvin's next words. Alvin couldn't cry and laugh, knowing that he couldn't go against her at this time, so he followed Hermione's words and comforted her. Finally, under Alvin's unremitting efforts, the little witch finally fell into a deep sleep. Today's events were a little too stimulating for Hermione, and getting a good night's sleep also helped to restore her spirits. Episode 22. Finally, Alvin dragged his tired body to the door of the Ravenclaw common room. Although the physical consumption is not large, but just now I have been using magic to protect the flying broom, coupled with overload urging. Alvin's mental consumption is indeed quite a lot. He decided to go back and take a nap to replenish his spirits. But when he walked into the lounge, he noticed that something was wrong. It was too quiet, and the moment he walked in, the little wizards in the lounge all looked up at him. This made Alvin a little hairy. It's so cool. Alvin, at this time a senior witch spoke, and then the whole lounge suddenly became noisy. That's right, it was so cool just now. Yes. First year can be so good, you should join the Quidditch team. All the little wizards are excited, and the hero saves beauty, plus the exciting process. This aroused the emotions of most of the Ravenclaw students, who were mostly witches. Alvin looked at the excited crowd stunned, and the whole person was still a little confused. Did the news travel so quickly? Before he could think more, a silhouette rushed to his side and threw himself into his arms. Exactly, Autumn. Alvin hurriedly grabbed Cho, and before he could speak, Cho's voice came over. Alvin, are you all right? Cho nervously pulled Alvin and anxiously checked for any traces of injury on Ael's body. It's okay, Cho, I'm okay. Gently stroking the girl's hair, Alvin felt the girl's concern and warmth in his heart. Seeing that Alvin was really fine, Cho was also relieved. Immediately twisted the soft flesh around Alvin's waist unhappily and expressed his dissatisfaction. Alvin knew that this was the little witch's jealousy of sacrificing her life to save Hermione. There is no way, and I can only laugh with it. Try to get through the cute level. Looking at the surrounding crowd, Cho knew that now was not the time to pursue it, and Cho retreated very sensibly. The eaglets next to them saw that the little two had finished chatting. Suddenly, Wu Yangyang surged up. Alvin, how did you ride the comet so fast? Alvin, are you really riding a flying broom for the first time? I heard that you caught that Gryffindor at once, is it really so powerful? Let me touch. Hiss. How can this still be used? Alvin panicked. This is going to be oiled. Just then, Roger Davis squeezed through the crowd. He is the captain of Ravenclaw Quidditch. It was also the guy who asked Alvin for girls chasing skills at the sorting ceremony. Roger laboriously cut through the crowd and shouted at Alvin. Alvin, Professor Flitwick has asked you to come to his office. Alvin Schuenma seemed to have caught a lifesaver. Shouted loudly, "Everyone, let it go. I'm going to see Professor Flitwick. I'll talk about any problems when I get back." The eaglets saw that Flitwick asked Alvin to go to his office, and had to give way. Alvin breathed a sigh of relief and ran out of the lounge door as if for his life. If he stays any longer, he doesn't know how much tofu he will be eaten. At the same time, word of what happened during the flight lesson spread in several other colleges. First Alvin's floating curse saved Neville, then Harry and Malfoy's air chase, and finally Alvin's hero saved May. With so many things happening in one lesson, how could the little wizards not be curious? Gryffindor common room. Harry rushed down from a height of 20 feet with a direct dive. A few inches off the ground, he grabbed Neville's memory ball, and then stopped instantly. Ron was dancing and talking about Harry and flying lessons, as if he had done all these things. Suddenly, George and Fred hugged Ron. "Okay, Ronnie, you've told Harry many times, now, tell us about Alvin." "Yes, Ron, tell me what Alvin saved Hermione." A little witch next to her also said to Ron, her name was Angelina John, a chaser in Grand Fendo. "Okay." Ron was a little frustrated, but because of the twins' 2 arms on his shoulders, he reluctantly talked about how Alvin caught up with Hermione and caught him. And Hufflepuff Academy also has young wizards who are full of good feelings for Alvin after understanding things, as an academy that is basically honest. They admired Alvin's desperate efforts to save people. But Slytherin, the attitude towards Alvin is much more ambiguous. On the one hand, Alvin slapped Slytherin in the face at the sorting ceremony again, this time again in the limelight. Many little snakes are already ready to find an opportunity to teach Alvin a lesson. On the other hand, there are some little witches who eat Alvin's face very much, plus Alvin can be literate and martial, not only excellent in class, but also so good at sports. The Slytherin's nature of worshipping the strong made it impossible for them to be hostile to Alvin. As a result, the 2 different factions of Slytherin actually set off a small debate because of Alvin. Alvin didn't know that this matter had such a big impact, and now he had arrived at the door of Professor Flitwick's office and knocked softly. "Please come in." Flitwick's voice came from inside, and Alvin pushed open the door and walked in. Still the same as last time, with a glance, Alvin walked to his desk. "Please sit, Mr. Gaunt." Seeing that it was Alvin, Professor Flitwick had a smile on his face and motioned for him to sit down. "Mr. Gaunt, your performance today is really good. Accurately using the floating charm at that speed is something that many adult wizards can't do." Apparently Professor Flitwick had understood the cause and effect, and appreciated the precise floating charm. "You passed the prize, Professor, I'll try my best too," Alvin said modestly. Flitwick did not continue the topic, but turned to ask, "Mr. Gaunt, I wonder if you know anything about Quidditch?" When Alvin heard this, his heart moved. "What do you mean, did you get the same script as Harry? Ready to join the Quidditch team yourself?" "Sir, I have a general understanding of the rules, but after all, I am flying for the first time today, and I have not really tried it yet." Alvin said that he had a little girlfriend who was a Quidditch fanatic, and he still knew the rules of Quidditch. After all, Cho often pulled him, gave him the rules of popular science Quidditch, and the crazy Amway Tornado team. "Great, Mr. Gaunt." Professor Flitwick couldn't have been happier. Then asked, "I wonder if you're interested in joining the Ravenclaw Quidditch team?" Episode 23, Alvin was not surprised to hear this. Harry picked up a ball and was pulled into the Gryffindor team by Professor McGonagall, but he picked up someone. Remembering that Autumn might join the Quidditch team this year, Alvin thought that joining the team could also spend more time with Autumn. After all, the 2 people are not in the same grade, and they can't meet each other in class. So he nodded. "Of course, Professor, I'm very interested, but is that okay? I've heard that you can't join a Quidditch team in 1st grade. Don't worry, Mr. Gaunt, I'll solve this problem." Hearing Alvin's affirmative answer, Professor Flitwick was very happy, and directly told Alvin not to worry about other things, and the rest was wrapped up in him. Professor Flitwick stood up, jumped on the floor, and walked to a large box by the window. Opening the lock, Professor Flitwick bent in, took out a long package, and handed it to Alvin. "Professor, this is?" Alvin was a little puzzled. "This is a Light Wheel 2000, the latest product of the year, sent to me by one of my students, who works as a designer at the Light Wheel manufacturer. I originally wanted to give him to Roger Davis and let him use it, but I'm sure you will be a better fit for him." When Alvin heard it, he couldn't help but be shocked. Professor McGonagall spent her own money to buy a handful for Harry, but she didn't expect that when she came to Professor Flitwick, a student would send one directly. It is worthy of Ravenclaw House, although there are not many pure-blood families inside, but there are indeed many technical talents that have appeared. These people are distributed in various backbone positions in the magic world, and once they are activated, they will definitely have a lot of influence. No wonder Slater New House has been dead to Gryffindor, without the slightest touch of Ravenclaw. Alvin was not polite, took the light wheel 2000, and held it directly in his arms. Thank you, Professor, I'll use it well. So when do I check in? Next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is the selection of the new batch of players. You go to Mr. Davis at that time, he will decide what position you will take. Professor Flitwick told Alvin a moment and let him go. Alvin did not delay, and returned to the lounge holding the light wheel 2000. In the lounge, a group of young wizards watched Alvin come back and surrounded him again. Alvin could only answer a few questions casually, dismissed them, and was quiet again. Autumn on the side also walked up? What is it? Pointing to the package in Alvin's hand, Cho asked. Light wheel 2000, Professor Flitwick gave it? Cho's mouth opened wide in surprise. Well, Professor Flitwick asked me to join the Quidditch team, but the position has not yet been decided. Cho looked even more surprised. Aren't first-year students not allowed to join the Quidditch team? What's this? Professor McGonagall called Harry to the office just now, and it is estimated that he will also join the Gryffindor Quidditch team. Alvin was unimpressed. I heard Professor Flitwick say that next Wednesday is the in-house selection. Cho, do you want to join too? Of course, my goal this year is to be a Ravenclaw seeker. Speaking of which, Cho's interest came. Seeing that Cho was so scrappy, Alvin thought about it. Anyway, the morning class is over, let's find an open space and try the light wheel 2000, right? Can I too? Of course, just a broom. After speaking, Alvin took Cho's hand and walked out. Let's go to the auditorium for lunch first, and then we'll go to the Black Lake and try it. After the two finished eating, they went to the Black Lake to do special training, watching the very happy Cho riding the light wheel 2000 in the sky, completing various technical actions. Alvin decided to buy Cho a light wheel 2000 as a gift this Christmas. As for this one, after all, it was given to him by Professor Flitwick, and it is not good to transfer it himself. The following week, Calm returned to the academy, and the young wizards in the first year gradually got back on track. Gradually adapted to life at Hogwarts. The most obvious manifestation is the increase in homework. One day Alvin was in the library and saw Harry and Ron praying to Hermione to borrow them to refer to the potion's paper. The old bat is simply not human, and the 3-foot-long paper left behind has to be a single compartment gap. However, this has no effect on Alvin, he has a lot of water in his previous life, and it is easy to cope with homework. He still had time to go with Cho to the Quidditch tryout. Both successfully joined the Quidditch team. In the end, Alvin chose a batsman who, in his own words, could better protect Cho. Cho just needs to catch the golden snitch with all his heart, and leave the rest to him. He will protect Cho. The little witch had heard such rhetoric, and smoothly let Alvin cheat away with a fragrant kiss. By the way, I fed a mouthful of dog food to the other Quidditch players. Episode 24. Soon, Alvin's joining the Ravenclaw Quidditch team was known to the students of the four houses. It was not surprising that the Grand Fendo house arrived, after all, their Mr. Savior had also joined the Quidditch team. Hufflepuff lives his own life and says nothing. On the Slytherin side, Malfoy said sourly that the head of his house was a person who followed the rules of the school, otherwise he could have entered the school team directly in his first year. Malfoy is said to have reported the incident to Professor Snape, but was scared away by a cold look from Snape. Ravenclaw, on the other hand, is the happiest one. They have not had good Quidditch results for several years, but Alvin is so powerful, he will definitely lead Ravenclaw to win the House Cup. To this end, several senior sisters also formed a cheerleading team and said that they would cheer for Alvin next time. Many little witches joined in, even Gryffindor girls and Hufflepuff girls. Roger Davis is very envious of this. He's the Quidditch captain. Why is there no cheerleader for him? Alvin didn't care about this, and arranged his time very tightly every day. Every day after class, I went to the library to read books and write homework with Hermione. Since the last flight lesson incident, the little witch has hidden from him for a while, and every day after class, she runs away, not communicating with Alvin at all. However, after a week, he returned to normal and seemed to join his cheerleaders. The girl's mind is too hard to guess. Alvin didn't understand this, but Hermione was normal. So that he could copy Hermione's homework. That's right, Alvin was too lazy to make up those smelly and long essays himself, and every time he brought Hermione's homework in the name of guidance. Hermione also had no doubt about him. After all, Alvin's usual performance in class was there, and he had already added almost 100 points to Ravenclaw. Alvin spends most of his time learning magic texts, and he has made great progress and mastered a lot of magic scripts. For example, fire, wind and water, these basic magic texts, he has studied very deeply. Without the help of a wand, it is already possible to cast some simple magic wandless spells. As his research deepened, Alvin believed he could absolutely do any wandless casting of magic. When the time comes, he can run into Voldemort, and he can spit out a large melon and spray him to death. In addition to going to the library, Alvin also has to accompany Cho to train Quidditch, and Alvin wants to lend the Light Wheel 2000 to Cho. He is a striker and does not demand much speed. Autumn needs this broom even more. However, Cho thought about it and refused, for the same reason that Alvin thought, which Professor Flitwick gave Alvin. She didn't quite fit it. And she also likes her sweep of the 7 stars. In desperation, Alvin could only give up, and wait until Christmas, and Cho could get the Light Wheel 2000 he sent. It also delayed a game. No big deal. In the blink of an eye, the time has come to October. On this day, Alvin was eating lunch with Cho as usual. Suddenly, 1,000 paper cranes flew from the air to his table. Alvin was stunned, opened the 1,000 paper cranes on the table, and saw that it read, "Mr. Gaunt, the first Transfiguration Club of the semester will take place this Saturday afternoon in the staff lounge next to my office. Given that you are entering the Transfiguration Club for the first time, you will have a quiz to demonstrate your transfiguration skills." Professor McGonagall stayed. After reading the above, Alvin suddenly realized that it was Professor McGonagall's handwriting. Thanks to him, he thought that there was a little witch who had thought of some new way to send love letters. Cho next to him also curiously brought his little head over. "I want to see what is written on it." Looking at Cho's curious look, Alvin handed her the 1,000 paper cranes. "The legendary Transfiguration Club, we only have 2 sixth-year seniors in Ravenclaw, and we only joined last year." After reading the contents of the 1,000 paper cranes, Cho sighed with emotion. Her talent in transfiguration is not very good, barely keeping up, but her talent in charms is good. So it was impossible for her to join Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration Club, but Professor Flitwick's Charms Club could be thought of. Actually, it's nothing special, as long as you can turn an object into an animal, even if that animal can't move, it's in shape. Alvin is very Versailles. Cho gave him an angry look. Autumn is not even familiar with the transformation between dead things now, let alone conjuring up a small animal. But Cho doesn't dwell on this, they will start their first Quidditch match next month, and Cho will have to practice for a while after training every day. She had no more energy to toss Alvin. Soon, the time came to Saturday, and Alvin also headed to what Professor McGonagall called the staff lounge, to begin his first Transfiguration Club. Episode 25. On Saturday, Alvin arrived at the staff lounge, next to McGonagall's office, on time. Alvin walked in and found that there were already several people inside. 2 of them he knew, one was a Ravenclaw prefect in 6th year. Deborah Burnk. A capable witch with short hair. The second person was a 6th grade boy, Ian Marshall. The 2 also saw Alvin and greeted him, and Deborah waved and motioned for him to sit down. Alvin walked over and sat down next to Deborah. "Say hello." "Hello, senpai." "Junior is really polite." Deborah covered her mouth and smiled. Immediately praised, Junior joined the Transfiguration Club in his first year, which really gave us Ravenclaw a big long face. Senpai passed the award, but Professor McGonagall saw that I had a little talent, so let me experience it in advance. Alvin hurriedly said that he was lucky. Deborah didn't say anything after hearing it, and everyone knew Professor McGonagall's temper. If you don't have the real stuff, you can't join this club. However, she did not refute Alvin, but reminded. "Junior, we are very happy that you have joined the Transfiguration Club, but the 2 people in Slytherin are not very happy. They don't think you qualify for this club." After speaking, Deborah also looked at the 2 boys sitting on the other side. The 2 men noticed Deborah's eyes and looked over, their eyes full of disdain and malice for Alvin. Both of them look extremely ugly, and at first glance, they are the product of pure-blood families intermarrying in order to keep their bloodline pure. Alvin also noticed the unkindness, but he didn't care, just kidding, although he started school now, he has not drawn a card once. But there are already a lot of spells and the like obtained by checking in every day, and many of them are far beyond the level of adult wizards. After all, the initial level of the spells rewarded by the system reached the OWLS level, and after repeating it a few times, the aura spells were not as powerful as his. Alvin directly ignored the 2, and then smiled at Deborah. "Don't worry, senpai, a little test won't be difficult for me." Deborah said she was warmed by the smile. Soon, Professor McGonagall, dressed in dark green wizard robes and a pointed hat on her head, walked in. Looking around, he saw that Alvin had also arrived, and smiled with satisfaction. "Dear students, today we have welcomed a new member, Mr. Alvin Gaunt, and let us welcome him." Alvin got up, gestured around, and finally bowed slightly like Professor McGonagall, and finally sat down. The others also gave some applause cooperatively, and even the Slytherin ugly people slapped twice perfunctorily, not daring to brush Professor McGonagall's face. The applause stopped, and Professor McGonagall continued. "Next, we need to give Mr. Gaunt a little test. Show off his level. Who wants to be an assistant?" At this time, one of the 2 in Slytherin House stood up. "Professor, let me try this Mr. Gaunt's level." After speaking, he smiled at Alvin and made Alvin disgusted. Professor McGonagall didn't object. Then Mr. Burns, let him be Mr. Gaunt's assistant. Professor McGonagall waved her wand, and 2 chairs were beckoned by him from the back of the common room. 1 chair per person, and animals are conjured up by transfiguration to compete. In addition, it is forbidden to attack the wizard himself, and it is forbidden to use spells other than transfiguration. Understood? The 2 nodded in agreement, that is, they understood, each took out his wand, and began to transform. Burst took the lead, turning his chair into a hyena, and pounced on Alvin's chair. Bernd also had 2 brushes on the transfiguration, and the hyena he conjured was stout, with some reflections under the light of a fong, and it looked very sharp. Seeing the hyena with a vicious expression rushing over, Alvin did not panic. With a touch of his wand, his chair immediately transforms into a Welsh buffalo with 2 huge horns, which are said to be able to fight lions without losing the wind. The buffalo's head threw forward, and the 2 horns instantly hit the hyena's body, pushing it out fiercely. Burst's face became a little ugly. He couldn't believe that this Alvin Gaunt could use transfiguration to conjure up a large animal like a buffalo when he was in 1st grade. In 1st grade, he was still trying to figure out how to conjure up a pipe box. But there is no way now, he doesn't want to admit defeat, he can only continue to cast transfiguration. The wand was pointed at the fallen hyena, and a ripple appeared on the hyena, which was gradually turning into an L. Flying creatures are more difficult to change than terrestrial creatures, because they require more refined magic to make animals fly. Obviously, Bost's transfiguration level is not enough, such a slow speed, if it was in battle, it would have been not a big melon. Alvin would not interrupt Burn's spell casting. If he interrupted him, what if he said that young Erwin did not speak of martial arts, what would this not count? So, Alvin quietly watched Burn's performance. Finally, nearly half a minute later, the hyena turned into an eagle, but with some incongruity in its wings. But still barely able to fly. That's it? Alvin was very speechless, but he didn't expect that this boss tossed for a long time, and what he came up with was still a half-finished eagle. However, Alvin was still a little unhappy about Burnt's use of eagles against Ravenclaw. I haven't turned into an eagle yet, so you changed one for me? Also used to hit me? Immediately, Alvin had no intention of playing, and with a flick of his wand, the Welsh buffalo instantly turned into a goshawk and soared into the sky. The wings were spread for 2 meters, and the sharp eagle eyes stared at the eagle on the opposite side, with a trace of contempt in his eyes. Such an ugly eagle is simply a shame among eagles. Oh. With a long groan, Alvin's transformed goshawk wings instantly pounced on the top of Burn's half-crippled eagle. Steely claws fiercely grabbed downward. Then he accelerated from top to bottom, pressing the burned eagle to the ground with a swift and incomparable attack. In an instant, Burn's eagle returned to its original form and became a torn chair. Episode 26. Looking at the torn chair, Burst stood frozen in place. Alvin, on the other hand, sat back in his chair as if he had accomplished a trivial matter. Others are also immersed in this disparity of competition. In the beginning, they did think it was a big competition. But this is the complete opposite of what they envisioned. That was Burned, one of the most accomplished transfiguration in Slytherin. Their family, which is the famous pure-blood 28 family, has family roots. Moreover, the bloodline of the Burned family has a lot of bonuses to transfiguration. However, he lost to a first-year student who had just been exposed to magic for less than 2 months. You know, other people here don't dare to pack tickets, their transfiguration must be better than Bost. At most, it is between Beau Zhong. Doesn't this mean that this first-year freshman's transfiguration has far surpassed everyone who is doing it? Looking at Boss, who was still standing in the center of the field, with a lost soul, the feeling of rabbit death and fox sadness rose in everyone's hearts. Are they already the remnants of the old days? The crowd expressed unacceptability. Syllable. 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 A round of applause came, pulling everyone out of their shock. When I looked up, it turned out to be Professor McGonagall. Very good, Mr. Gaunt, I didn't expect your transfiguration spell to be far beyond my imagination. Professor McGonagall looked at Alvin appreciatively. If it weren't for the fact that there was no such precedent at Hogwarts, and Professor Flitwick would never have let anyone go. She was definitely going to pull Alvin to Gryffindor. Thinking of this, she felt very sorry in her heart. Why did Alvin refuse Slytherin but did not come to Gryffindor? Thinking about the scene where he saved Miss Granger, this is obviously a reckless little lion. But it's too late to say anything. Retracting her thoughts, Professor McGonagall didn't think much and refocused on today's club topic. Well, folks, since Mr. Gaunt has passed the test, let's move on to today's topic, on the second of Gamp's law of transformation. Everyone also let go of the shock in their hearts and listened carefully to Professor McGonagall's explanation. Alvin also listened carefully, although his transfiguration level is good now. But a professor's explanation can still make him receive a lot of goods. It can also consolidate the foundation. Well, for these senior students who are already very esoteric, then Alvin here, that is, the foundation. It's been 2 weeks since Alvin went to Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration Club, and Halloween is only a week away. Quidditch training has been increasing lately. Every night, Alvin massages Cho to relieve her fatigue. The little witch was crushed by homework and Quidditch training, and had to scold Roger Davis every day. But Alvin said that it is not bad, and it is okay when massaging every day. Ahem. But today, Alvin didn't go to training. Today, do not get married, it is advisable to open the box. Well, it was all made up by Alvin, because today Alvin found that he had saved enough 10,000 gold coins, and also updated the Halloween special card pool. Limited time up until Death Snape, limited time open. This round of up lasts 7 days. When the player draws the gold card for the first time, it must be until Death Snape. To Death Snape. Potions talent, 7. Dark arts talent, 6. Defense against the dark arts talent, 5. Spells, omitted. Looking at Snape's card introduction, Alvin was very stunned. Recently, Snape had his eye on him, and the potions class was frantically aimed at Alvin. And every time he refines a potion, his task is always different from others. Others refine cold medicine, and he refines joy medicine. Others refine swelling elixir, he refines beauty elixir. You know, the lowest of these potions is only in the 4th grade to learn. If this continues, it is estimated that one day, Snape will let him refine the elixir. Alvin's current potions level couldn't stop Snape's increasing difficulty. So this time, this card appeared in the card pool, which can be regarded as solving his urgent need. His current potions talent is 5, which is outstanding, and he is increasing by 1 level, which is enough to deal with Snape's difficulties in a short time. And maybe Purple Carrie can also draw knowledge of potions. If that's the case, it couldn't be better. Dear, help me draw out all 10,000 gold coins. Alvin spoke softly, for fear of frightening the system. System. Oh, forgot, the spicy chicken system is not smart. It doesn't matter what the tone is. Hurry up, finish it all at once. Don't let the reader scold me for water. After speaking, Alvin closed his eyes and waited for the final fruit. There was a burst of ding. Bite. Bite. After the card draw tone. Alvin opened his eyes and looked at the 3 golden cards in front of him, and Alvin grew his mouth. Episode 27. Looking at the 3 golden cards in front of him, Alvin didn't know whether he should be happy or sad. One Snape card, not to mention, the other 2 are actually the same person. Tom Riddle, nickname, Voldemort, 2nd generation Dark Lord, Dark Arts talent, 8. Defense against the Dark Arts talent, 6. Spells, 3 unforgivable curses, and many black magics. Special skill, how to craft horcruxes. Dizzy, Alvin was completely dizzy. How about 1 Snape in the pool and then 2 Voldemorts? My black magic talent is at full level, what use do you have? Oh, and the defense against the dark arts talent. That's fine. According to the introduction of the system, each time an Alvin fusion card obtains talent, the maximum limit of the card level cannot exceed +1. For example, Voldemort, fusing the defense against the dark arts talent, Alvin can reach the level of level 7. But with any level 6 defense against the dark arts talent, he would not break through to level 8. Exactly then, Voldemort drew 2 and raised it to 7. Alvin felt good in his heart, and the 3 cards were perfectly utilized. Next, he looked at the pile of purple cards and counted, there were 18 in total, and the explosion rate was not bad. I took a closer look at the reward above. The more I looked at it, the more strange Alvin's face became, and in the end, a handsome face was directly screwed together, and the expression was very strange. The 16 episodes of the cards are, Knowledge of Potions *1, Knowledge of Charms *1, Knowledge of Transfiguration *1, and Drill Heart Carpal Bone *5, Avada Death *5, Fire Curse *5. Alvin. System, say, did you mean it, how is it all black magic? Alvin was directly speechless, 18 purple cards, 15 black magic, plus 2 Voldemort gold cards. Well, Snape counts as half too. Did he stab the Dark Wizard's lair? In desperation, Alvin could only fuse all the cards. The change in talent is not experienced. Countless spell messages poured out of Alvin's mind. After 5 minutes, Alvin slowly opened his eyes and exhaled softly. Stretching out his palm, he slowly opened it, and a silver flame appeared in his hand. With Alvin's thoughts, the flames kept changing the shape. Eagles, lions, snakes, eventually, transformed into the form of Fury, a phoenix spreading its wings. As soon as he shook his palm, the flames immediately disappeared, leaving no scars on Alvin's hands. I remember Malfoy's fire curse was red. And Grindelwald's fierce fire is blue. It seems that everyone's fierce fire color is still different, but the silver color is also good, it's quite cool. Alvin muttered. Now his fierce level, not to say that it is similar to Grindelwald, but it is not far away. Smoke 1 or 2 more at most, and that's about it. As for Crabbe and Gowerna, he let out a fierce fire and burned himself to death. The rating estimate in the system is not even a level 1. Subsequently, Alvin checked his other magic and found that they all improved at different levels. The magic has also improved quite a bit. Open my personal properties panel. Alvin opened his mouth and ordered the system. A blue light screen appeared in front of his eyes. Host, Alvin Gaunt. Age, 11 years old. Birthday, October 31st. Identity, first-year Hogwarts freshman. Bloodline, witch spirit, awakening, growing with strength until full awakening. Magic scale, 19.4. Magic items, guardian necklace, blessing elixir *1, instant blue elixir *3. Charms, talent, 6, excellent. Defense against the dark arts, 7, wizards of the sky column. Transfiguration charm talent, 4, extraordinary. Potions talent, 6, excellent. Black magic, 9, demon king descended. Spells, fire curse, avada spell, heart drill, carpal bone, only the 3 most skilled are listed. Gold, 0. Looking at the black magic talent on his panel, and the 3 spells with the highest proficiency, he fell silent. Alvin felt that he was simply the perfect candidate for the 3rd generation of the Dark Lord. Although I usually sign in, I have drawn many other magics, but I can't stand the purple card plus the proficiency, Now, he drew 5 purple cards at once, coupled with his black magic talent, and suddenly raised his black magic level to the level second only to the 3 demon kings. Now I should have the level of an elite Auror, right? Through the system for the manifestation of various talents and the number of magic powers. Alvin divided the wizards of the wizarding world into several grades. Those who did not graduate will not be mentioned, and after that, they are normal adult wizards, elite adult wizards, Aurors, elite Aurors, professors, and Dumbledore are pseudo-legendary levels like them. The reason why Dumbledore is considered to be a pseudo-legend. It was because of their talent level, which did not reach level 9. That's why Alvin added a real legendary level to it. Used to motivate your future self. Alvin's current magic level has far surpassed that of ordinary wizards, 4 or 5 times that of them. Coupled with the spells he kept pumping, at a normal level, there was no problem dealing with an Auror, or even an elite Auror. If Alvin used his own dark magic, it is estimated that even a professor-level wizard like Snape would have to deal with it carefully. Nodding, Alvin was quite satisfied with his strength. After all, he had entered Hogwarts for less than 2 months. There is the current strength. When Voldemort is resurrected, he will have the power to protect himself. If you're lucky, draw more gold cards to increase your mana cap. Maybe then Alvin himself will go up with his wand and fight Voldemort. It's time to defeat Voldemort, scatter the Death Eaters, and then build your own organization as the 3. Crooked, can't think anymore. It must have been the dog system that allowed me to pump so much black magic and affected my mind. How could I be a 3rd generation? Shaking his head, Alvin threw out the unreliable thoughts in his head. At this time, the voice of the system suddenly appeared in my mind. Episode 28, ding. Congratulations to the host, through your own efforts, you can complete 100 consecutive draws. Bonus system upgraded, the system is being upgraded. Upgrade complete, this upgrade content opens diamond level cards. Listening to the prompts in his mind, Alvin was curious that this system had actually been upgraded, and there were more diamond level cards. Alvin looked at some basic information about diamond quality cards. Diamond level cards, a certain probability, 1%, of drawing cards that exceed the limits of the current wizarding world, and the basic reward is a talent breaking card. Talent breaking card, unconditionally increases a talent level up to 9. Note, diamond cards are not protected with guaranteed probability. After reading it, Alvin somewhat understood that this diamond card was the card that allowed him not to be limited by the level of contemporary magic. With diamond level cards, even if he is unlucky, he can fill all his talents by drawing a few of the most basic talent cards. At that time, the full level of talent will be full of firepower. Maybe you can break through the limits of the world and reach another level. But these things are still too far away from him now. Not to mention the issue of strength. Let's just say that after drawing all the gold coins on my body, I have to save at least 3 months to draw a wave of 100 consecutive coins. This time, he can save enough 10,000 gold coins in 2 months, or because Alvin first entered the wizarding world, he can do something casually, and there will be an achievement reward. In the future, it will definitely become more and more difficult to achieve missions, and the main source of gold is daily missions. Alvin thought for a while, and found that this system upgrade had no effect on him for the time being, so he just didn't want to, turned over, and was ready to sleep. Thursday, today is the last day of October, and tonight, it is Halloween. In the afternoon, the first-year wizards of the 3 houses were taking a class on charms. Today, we continue to learn the floating charm. Standing on a pile of books, Professor Flitwick explained today's content. The little wizards in the audience were a little absent-minded, and their hearts had already flown to the evening dinner. Alvin sat in the corner by the window and looked out the window boredly. After all, the content of the class cannot be said to be meaningless for him now, and can only be said to be useless. Professor Flitwick could also see the agitation of the young wizards. So the lecture was stopped and the young wizards were asked to work in groups of 2 or 2 to contact the floating charm. Instead, he called Alvin over and asked Alvin to tour the classroom with him to correct the little wizard's mistakes. Hermione was supposed to sit next to Alvin, but Alvin was pulled away by the professor, and she had to go and form a team with the lone Ron. Ron was holding the old wand his brother had left behind, pointing to the feathers on the table, and shouted loudly, "You got him, Leviosa!" While shouting, both arms were still waving continuously, as if this would increase his casting rate. Hermione couldn't take it anymore. "You said it wrong, it should be pronounced like this." Hermione didn't hesitate to point out Ron's mistake, and then successfully made the feather float with the correct pronunciation and gestures. Professor Flitwick, who was not far away, saw it and was very excited. "Well done, Miss Granger." When Ron saw it, his face had been very ugly, and he yelled at Hermione in a low voice. "Yes. You're amazing, no wonder Snape calls you Miss Jack-of-all-trades." Harry saw it and wanted to open his mouth to say something, but ultimately didn't. When the little witch heard Ron's words, her eyes instantly turned red. Ignoring Ron, he found an empty table to practice. And this scene, Alvin missed, because he was correcting Parvati Pettir's mistake. After class, Alvin arrived at the auditorium. The entire auditorium has been decorated very differently from usual. 1,000 bats flutter on the walls and ceiling. There are also thousands of pumpkin lanterns floating in the air. The candle in the middle of the pumpkin flickers and dims, creating a slightly gloomy atmosphere. Alvin and Cho sat together, just about to want to use today's food. Suddenly, Professor Quirrell barged in, and he ran a few steps to Professor Dumbledore, dressed in a rough dress. "Troll. In the underground classroom. I thought you knew." After saying that, he fainted. Alvin heard Quirrell's words and his face changed. He remembered this scene. Isn't this the plot of Hermione meeting a troll? Although in the original book Harry and Ron successfully rescued Hermione. But this is the real world, and if they are a step late, won't Hermione be in danger? Thinking of this, Alvin couldn't sit still and hurriedly said to Cho, "In a while, you follow everyone, don't run around. I suddenly remembered that there are some things that need to be dealt with, don't worry about me." After saying that, Alvin ran towards the side door. Cho looked at Alvin worriedly, but she knew that Alvin was measured and would not mess around, so she nodded. On the high platform, Dumbledore's words were heard, and the prefects were asked to take the students of their respective houses back to their dormitories. At this time, Alvin also came to the second floor and went to the bathroom. He could already faintly smell the stench emitted by the troll. Episode 29. Smelling the sour smell in the air, Alvin frowned and ran in the direction of the bathroom. It didn't take long for Alvin to arrive at the bathroom door and hear heavy footsteps in the girls' bathroom. Without pausing, Alvin immediately ran in. Then I saw the ugly troll. This guy was 12 feet tall, his skin was dull, and his huge body was a small head, which seemed very incongruous. The lower body is a bucket-like thick leg. Bare big feet with calloused feet. A little witch was cornered, so frightened that she forgot to scream. Who is not Hermione? Seeing the trolls approaching Hermione step by step, Alvin raised his hand and a flock of birds, 10,000 bullets. The rubble on the ground soared into the air and lined up to hit the troll's head. Alvin didn't dare to use too much magic, mainly for fear of knocking the troll away, so that it would be easy to injure Hermione by mistake. Just the right amount of strength just attracted the attention of the troll. The troll, sensing someone attacking him from behind, turned clumsily, his stupid head unable to understand what was happening, and for a while, he walked towards Alvin with his big feet. When the trolls came to his side, Alvin petrified them all again, fixing the trolls in place. At the same time, he quickly bypassed the troll and came to Hermione's side. Hermione saw Alvin's arrival and finally couldn't help but sob in a low voice. Alvin couldn't care to comfort the little witch at this time. The skin of the giant monster is also highly resistant to magic, and it is estimated that it will be able to act immediately. Sure enough, when Alvin ran next to Hermione and blocked her behind, the troll's body began to shake, and it was immediately able to break free from the petrification curse. But without worries, Alvin can also do his best. The wand is pointed at the troll. Thunderbolt explosion. Alvin did not relent at all, and a high-level bursting spell shot out. Pure magic effects don't hurt trolls much, and black magic is inconvenient to use. Trolls can only be damaged with the physical damage generated by the burst charm. The giant monster ate a full bursting spell, was hit by a huge shock wave, directly crashed through the wall of the bathroom, and flew out. The wooden stick in his hand also broke out of his hand and flew into the air. Saw the wooden stick in midair. Alvin flashed an idea, pointing at the wooden stick. The wooden stick was in the air, quickly turning into a sword, and the sword body reflected silver light, which was extremely sharp. Overwhelming. This is an advanced projectile spell that allows objects to shoot at enemies at breakneck speed. The sword was like a magic weapon of the immortal envoy, attacking the giant monster. All this is tedious to say, but it only happens in 2 seconds. Before the troll could land, it was hit in the throat by the sword. Then nailed to the wall of the corridor. My Merlin! There was an exclamation outside. Vaguely like the voices of Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick. Seeing the trolls nailed to the wall and the professors coming, Alvin finally breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the little witch who was still sobbed, Alvin carried her half-carried out of the bathroom. Sure enough, Professor McGonagall, Professor Flitwick, and Professor Snape were just outside the door and were about to rush in when they saw Alvin walk out. Then Quirrell also came and he only glanced at the troll, then crouched on the ground and whimpered. Snape glanced at Alvin and turned to check on the trolls nailed to the wall. Professor McGonagall turned pale and pursed her lips tightly. What the hell are you doing? Mr. Gaunt and Ms. Granger, I need an explanation. At this time, Professor McGonagall was afraid and angry. 2 first-year little wizards actually dared to fight trolls. You must know that although the trolls have a bad brain, their high magic-resistant skin gives many adult wizards after graduation a headache. Professor Flitwick was also worried at first, but he was relieved to see that the 2 of them were intact. Walked over to see how they killed the trolls. Sorry, Professor, we were dating. I didn't expect that a giant monster came in from the castle, and I had to fight with this big guy. Dating? In the girls' bathroom? McGonagall's professor's voice rose 3 degrees. She couldn't believe it. Did the little wizard play so wild now? Yes, Professor, there are few people here. Alvin said breathlessly without blushing. Snape gave Alvin a slightly mocking look. Professor Flitwick looked at Alvin with a slightly complicated look. He knew the relationship between Alvin and Cho. Flitwick didn't expect his genius little wizard to be so careful. Hermione, who was still held in Alvin's arms, blushed. She knew that Alvin said this in order not to be punished by Professor McGonagall. But she was still shy, and her mind was messy, and she couldn't help but think about it. Then, she thought about the relationship between Alvin and the second-year Ravenclaw senior, and her heart was even more complicated. Episode 30. Professor McGonagall didn't expect Alvin to be so ridiculous. For a time, he was stunned in place. But seeing Hermione in Alvin's arms, she was old and sophisticated, and she also guessed something. But Professor McGonagall will not break it. After all, the little wizard in her own academy is still Hermione, whom she admires. Ravenclaw and Gryffindor deduct 10 points, because you didn't follow the professor's instructions to return to the dormitory. However, as a first-year wizard, you earned Ravenclaw 20 points for defeating the troll. I have to say, Mr. Gaunt, this sword you have changed is really sharp and has a strong shaping effect. I believe it will remain like this for a while in the future. As a master of transfiguration, Professor McGonagall could immediately see that this sword was derived from metamorphosis. After beating a stick and giving a handful of sweet dates, I couldn't help but sigh in admiration. As for Hermione, the 10 points deducted should be taken as a warning for today, and I hope that the little witch will be more stable in the future. Hermione. Hermione, are you all right? At this time, Harry and Ron also ran over, panting and coming to everyone. The 2 looked at Hermione nervously. Hermione didn't answer, just looked up at them. Professor McGonagall saw that things were also clear here, so she let a few people go. The bathroom was devastated, the floor of the corridor was a mess, and several of their professors had to use a spell to restore the place to its original state. I have to say that wizards are really convenient in some aspects. Hermione also stood up from Alvin's arms, her eyes red from crying. However, when Alvin passed by Snape, Snape suddenly stopped him. Come to my office next Wednesday after potions class. After Snape finished speaking, without waiting for Alvin's reply, he went to dispose of the troll's corpse. Alvin was stunned, although he was curious in his heart, but he did not ask now, and continued to walk forward after agreeing. Along the way, the 4 people were silent, and no one spoke. I'm sorry. Hermione. Halfway through, Ron suddenly spoke. The other 3 stopped at the same time. Looked at Ron. Ron felt the 3 people's gazes, and although he was a little uncomfortable, he continued. In today's charms class, I was impulsive. I shouldn't have said that about you. Please forgive me. After saying this, Ron also looked at Hermione. Hermione pursed her lips and didn't speak. Harry next to him wanted to intercede, but he didn't know how to speak for Ron. Alvin was a little appreciative of Ron at this time. Although reckless, irritable, and sometimes inexplicably jealous. But after all, an upright lion. The courage to admit mistakes is a rare quality. What's more, he and Harry rushed over, also to save Hermione. You're right, Ron, I'm indeed Miss Jack of all trades. Hermione threw her little head up, looking proud. This title is the best affirmation for me, and next time you have a mistake, I will still point it out. After speaking, she took Alvin's hand, took the first step, and walked forward, leaving Harry and Ron to look at each other again. So she's forgiving me? Ron scratched his head, a little unsure of what Hermione meant. Probably? Harry was also confused, but seeing Hermione's brisk pace, he spoke with some uncertainty. In front of the Gryffindor common room, Alvin dropped Hermione here and prepared to leave. But the little witch grabbed him. That. Thank you for not only saving me, but also lying to me in front of Professor McGonagall. The little witch seemed a little shy and spoke staccatoli. Alvin smiled slightly. It's okay, I also smelled a strange smell, so I went over to take a look. Everything was a coincidence. Alvin wouldn't say anything that he had seen the movie and knew the plot. At this time, you can only find an excuse to prevaricate. Looking at Alvin Juancho's face with a gentle smile, Hermione's heart raced a little. Finally, Hermione gently hugged Alvin's waist, stood on tiptoe, and kissed Alvin lightly on the face with her foot. Then said breathlessly, "Don't think about it, I'm just thanking you for saving me again this time, plus the last flying lesson, you have already saved me twice." Alvin didn't react after speaking, and Hermione herself was embarrassed first. Harry and Ron, who were a little behind, also arrived at the door of the common room at this time, just in time to see Hermione kissing Alvin. The two couldn't help but open their mouths wide. Ron, in particular, felt the top of his head sink suddenly, as if something was on his head. And his heart was empty, as if something had left him. Alvin didn't expect the little witch to be so bold, but he didn't say much after hearing her words. Nodding in understanding, he headed for the stairs and waved at Harry and Ron.